There's not a formula to parenting, right? You train up a child in the way in which he should go. You look at Proverbs, and it wasn't beyond the realm of knowing that there was temptations out there, but speaking about those temptations in a very open and honest way, and always giving our children an opportunity to come and talk with us.
Hey, Castleview, great to be back again at the Castleview Baptist Church podcast. Thank you so much for tuning back in again. A couple of weeks ago, I preached a message on the home, and we talked about the blueprint for building a godly home. And I thought it would be great to be able to sit down with a couple that has done so. They're kind of getting out of the raising of kids phase and getting these kids out of the house. Rich and Cindy Klepper, so nice to have you here today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us. You've had a lot going on in life, and I'm going to find out about the kids in just a minute. But tell us about the last year or so of your life. You're in a new phase, new career. What are you doing? What's going on?
Well, it's been a really interesting year, hasn't it, honey?
It has.
Yes. I've spent the last 30-some years practicing architecture, design, construction, facilities management. And my wife and I recently brought on a new endeavor called Christian Brothers Automotive. We really got introduced to this through Steve Peterson here at the church.
So the thinking, let me just make sure I got the thinking right. The thinking was, if Steve can do it, anybody can do it. Is that?
Not entirely, but yes. It's been a great journey. Matter of fact, I've been down at the store yesterday. I'll be going back down there again today, and he's just been a real good mentor.
Good. Mm-hmm. He's a great guy, good leader. Yeah. We did a podcast with him a couple of months back, and he's doing a great job over there. So we take our cars over there to him. So they do a really good job. So far so good. You're getting settled in and building clientele. And what's the biggest challenge of being a business owner?
I think it's really dealing with the public. You want to serve your guests well. Yeah. You want to provide a great experience and a great service at a reasonable price, and things go wrong. And it's really a testing of your mettle when that happens. Yeah. Testing of your fortitude, and we've had some missteps, but fortunately most things have gone well.
Well, two things would be true. One, whenever I go to Christian Brothers, they're just different. I just love. I'll walk in there, it feels like a little man spa. You walk in there, it's clean. They're very honest. They've always done a really good job for us. And but there's another side of that. You just kind of alluded to it. When people go to a mechanic shop, it's not their best day usually, right? I mean, even if it's an oil change, nobody, owning a car is. Anytime you've got to put any money into it, it's not your favorite day, right? I mean, you've already had to take some time off of work. It's already inconvenient. And so people, they kind of come there in a little bit of a bad mood, I would think. Would that be accurate? Even if you did a great job, it's kind of like, hey, great job, here's $700. You don't feel great about that.
You're absolutely right. But I would tell you that what's been intriguing to me too, though, there are people who really do enjoy taking care of their car. And we do have that other side as well.
Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, you meet people at their lowest point of the day, and certainly there is gospel opportunities in that. We've had the opportunity to share our faith several times with people that have come in, so it's been really neat.
I love that.
Yeah.
Totally random question. How do you diffuse upset people? Because there are, right? I mean, and you said we've had some missteps, or you're going to. I mean, any car, mechanic, any church, anyone that works with people, you're going to have some missteps along the way. How do you diffuse upset people?
Well, I think first and foremost, you really kind of meet them where they're at, and you listen to them, and you offer a solution. You don't just leave them there. Oftentimes for us, we end up probably doing a little bit more than what we're responsible for, just to delight the customer in the experience. So it's not always easy, but listen. It starts with listening and having empathy and love for that person. And
that is really good.
That's really what's around the brand, is having love for your neighbor. So
yes, that's great. Have you read Horst Schulze's Excellence Wins?
I have not. No.
You got to read it. Okay. He's the founder of Ritz-Carlton. And he talks in that book about when somebody's upset, And they, the toilet's not working. There's a noise in the room. Whatever. There are things that happen in hotel rooms, obviously. And he said when somebody's upset, they've trained their people that they need to take that frustration off of that person. In other words, they come down to we've all been there, right? We go down to complain, something's wrong. And we've all had that moment where the person behind the desk doesn't take it seriously. Well, they give an excuse.
Sure.
Or they act as if it's not that big of a deal. And you walk away twice as frustrated as you did. And so he teaches all his people that what people want is for you to say, I am so sorry, sir. Forgive me, sir. Let me take care of that. We've got it and handle it. And Horst Schulze says in their business that people will usually walk away after complaining and feel bad they complained. They just needed somebody to offload their frustration to. And if you'll receive it, then they'll, they're okay at that point. So it's a really good, you ought to check that one out. It's one of my favorites as far as kind of working with people and that kind of thing for sure. So I suppose you'll have a master class in dealing with people in about a year.
I imagine you're right.
We might be able to sit down and we ought to sit down with you and the Petersons and say, okay, tell us, how do you deal with people that are frustrated? And then of course I'd be a good host because I work at a church. People never get upset at church, do they? No. Somebody asked me a couple years ago. They said, "Hey, what's the best part about work about being a pastor?" And I said, "You know what? I think the best part, without question, would be the people." And then they said, "Hey, what's the worst part?" I said, same answer.
Absolutely.
Said, because you have both sides of it, right? And I think probably your industry, you'd probably have the same a little bit. I mean, you get people frustrated, but at the same time, you get people come in and go, man, they're raving fans that this was really good and they did a great job for us. Yeah. So, well, we're praying for a good start for you all. And you've been going now, what, about a year?
No, 6 months.
6 months. Is that right? Okay. So far, so good.
So far, so good.
So far, so good. Well, that's good. Tell us about your family. How many children do you have? How old are they? We know one of them pretty well, and we'll talk about that in a minute too. Tell us, Cindy, about your, how many kids do you have?
Okay, we have 3. We actually were high school sweethearts and got married young, started our family young. They are 26, 28, and 30 right now.
Wow.
And the 2 girls are married and have babies of their own.
Wow. How do you like being a grandparent?
I love being a grandma.
You love it? Yeah. You love it. My wife is waiting for that day. And she'll tell him when it's time, when you're ready, but hurry up.
Yeah.
It should be time. You should be ready. Interesting. Okay. So you have how many grandkids now?
3.
You have 3 of them now. Okay. Excellent. How'd y'all meet?
So junior high, I moved to Osceola, where we're from, in junior high. My parents relocated from about 3 hours from there, and we spent junior high and high school together. We ended up going to separate colleges about 53 miles apart, but we saw each other every weekend. I worked for her dad.
Okay.
And so I had purpose and reason for going home every weekend, and we couldn't wait to get married. We actually got married when we both had finished college, but then immediately went back to graduate school and then had our first baby about 1 year and 9 months later. So
wow, that's awesome. So we know, I know you've got a couple of older children, but we know Dalton well, and getting to know him better. And of course, he met a girl at church, and that's a great place to meet a girl.
It is.
Matter of fact, Drew, our producer here, he met his wife here at the church. It's a great place to meet a spouse for sure. And Dalton met Samantha Cuellar here, and of course they're getting married in just a couple of weeks, March 1st, right? Is that correct? The wedding date, March 1st? And sometimes you meet a couple, and you kind of look at them and go, these two they're designed for each other. I think Dalton and Samantha are like that. The first time I got to kind of sit down with them and talk with them, it was like you two just really seem to fit. Really very comfortable with each other. You just kind of see their strengths kind of meshing and melding and all of that. Really kind of fun to watch. You guys have got to be thrilled about it.
We are. Actually, all 3 of our children met their spouses through either a Bible study or at church.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow.
And Melinda Chalfant is largely responsible for that
Yes.
introduction.
Well, I would never know that. She's never mentioned that. I hadn't heard. No, she said she loved being matchmaker between them for sure. I love that. I think that's a neat relationship and one that I know she's proud of because it's just a neat connection there for sure. So Sunday or a week and a half ago now, we talked about the blueprints of a godly home, and we had 4 primary things we talked about. And I just wanted to ask you all, as seasoned veterans, no perfection. There's not a parent that's perfect, right? I mean, we've got one Jesus who lived this earth and didn't make any mistakes. We make mistakes, but you've got children that are walking with Christ and love Jesus and are doing well. And so I thought, well, let's sit down and get to talk about it a little bit. The very first point we talked about, we were in Psalm 127, and the very first thing we said was God has got to be the builder of the home. And what I meant by that is when he says in verse 1, except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it. How did you, growing up, because I see it in your children, that God is important, right? I don't think he was an add-on in your house. I don't think it was just kind of like well, here's all the important stuff, kids, and oh, by the way, here's an elective. We'll add this Jesus part of this. How did you all make God the foundation, the center of your home?
Yeah. I would tell you that we had purposeful parenting. It was very intentional. I love the saying, for every road you travel, every mile you go down that road, there's 2 miles of ditch, right? Where you have the opportunity to fall off on either side. And, when we woke up in the morning, we were speaking about God. When we were doing things throughout the day, we were speaking about God. We made them a part of our life in prayer. We made them a part of our life in things that we did, where we went, who we visited with. Yeah. They were always at church, Sunday school, Awana, Sunday night service. I mean, I was raised.
You were one of those parents that when the doors of the church were open, you were there.
We were there.
We were.
Wow. Yeah. You had your babies were drug babies.
You drug them to church. Yes, absolutely.
So you're talking about Deuteronomy 6, basically. Yeah. I mean, you're saying, hey, when we got up, it was God. When we walked by the way, it was God. When we sat down to eat, it was God. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I got unemployed back in 2009, and it was really interesting because we actually brought them into even that journey with. When we kind of got to the end of that trial, and we all got together as a family, and we wrote down on a whiteboard that she used for homeschooling, where we wrote down every blessing that we could think of that was out of the ordinary.
Wow.
It wasn't even the original. I mean, it wasn't what you would commonly think that God was doing, and we filled that up, and we just had moments of praise and
during a time of unemployment.
Yeah,
yes.
You did all of this. Okay, this is interesting. So, how did you? I think some parents would say, this is a really bad thing. We're a little nervous. Yeah. We've got some fears. Yeah. I don't want to freak my kids out.
Absolutely.
So let's just act like everything's normal. Let's just send them off to school. Were they homeschooled or they were homeschooled? They were home. Okay. So I'm going to go hunt for jobs during the day so they don't know what's going on. Or you could say, no, they're going to be a part of this so they can see what God's going to do. How did you handle that unemployment time?
Well, I would tell you, we'd be remiss in not mentioning that the whole reason for taking unemployment in terms of not following my job, which was required to move, was because our oldest was at a point in time where she didn't have a lot of friends. She was very close with the friends she had. And we had just decided as a family that church was so important. Our kids had all been saved by that point. But we just felt like we were at a weird spot in life where we had the opportunity to maybe lose our daughter. We just wanted to make sure that she was solid and well-grounded and was able to finish school and so forth with the friends that she had. And so they were part of that discussion from the beginning. And, when I was up, she was down. When she was down, I was up. It was really interesting how God worked that. And I don't know, we shared that with the kids, age appropriated, right, where we didn't instill fear. God was providing in amazing ways, and the kids saw it and recognized it in real time. It was just a really neat time. It really was.
Cindy, don't you think that? What are you doing there? You said purposeful parenting. What you're doing there is you're preparing them for their own challenges down the road. Hey, I've seen God do something before. It's almost like David going to Saul. Hey, I can take that. God can, through me, take that Philistine, because this is what God did before. He took care of that lion. He took care of that bear. And now you're instilling in your kids a strong belief, not just I've heard about this belief, I've seen it. Oh, taste and see that the Lord is good. And what you did with that is you let them taste it and feel that a little bit. Ooh, we need to depend on God. Daddy is praying, mommy's praying about God helping us. And then if you don't share that struggle, you don't get to enjoy the victory on the other side, right? Did you find that valuable to be able to share those things with the kids? Can you look back and go, hey, that was good, actually, they knew about it?
Yeah. No, I think it was, really good that we didn't just hide it from them.
Yeah.
It was summertime. In the summer, we usually go camping, and, we didn't do those extra things because we didn't have the money to do those extra things. So they saw that. They saw, how careful we were being.
I'm sure they even learned some wisdom through that. That hey, we don't have, we don't just go spend because we're not working the way the dad usually does. So, I was very wise, I think, to do that to help them. We sat down with the boys. Debbie was diagnosed with thyroid cancer in 2009, and you said age appropriate, and we were too. But our oldest would have been, in 2009, he would have been 11, and our youngest was 9. So we sat down and in the best language I knew how, we were trying to explain that mom was going to get ready to go through surgery. We had some things to pray about, but I got emotional, right? I get choked up because I'm talking to my 2 little boys about something mom's going through that was a big deal. And I'll never forget, I get choked up and I kind of, I can't talk for a second. And our oldest is very sensitive. He was 11, and he looked up at me and he said, "Is it cancer?" And it is, but we got to walk through that together. And they were able to see the good hand of God on her life too, and mom and dad have to depend. I think that's important. We didn't talk about that Sunday, but I think that's a really important thing. Let your kids age appropriately. Don't freak them out. You don't have to. We don't know what we're gonna eat. You know what I mean? We may be kicked out of the house if we can't make this last. No, age. They need safety and security and all of that. But hey, kids. We need God to help us. And we're going to pray that God will. And now on the other side of it, you get to enjoy that. Kids, look what you come home and go, look what God did. Here we are now. He got us through it. Every person needs to learn that at some point. Yeah. So that was one way you kept God as the builder.
Absolutely.
Anything else come to mind as far as making him the center of the home?
Well, I would tell you that Cindy did a really good job of letting me lead the home. Cindy was very, very good at letting the kids know that Dad had certain responsibilities and allowed me the freedom of living into those. And I'm forever grateful for, my wife and allowing that experience. We started off talking about grandchildren, but I will tell you that I think the best title in the world is Daddy. I really do. And she would line the kids up. She did a really neat job in the morning or in the evening when I'd get home, that they were always kind of trying to get positioned to be the first one to hug me. And any man who goes off to work and has a hard day at work and comes home and, you hear stories about people wanting to kick the dog and do this. I never experienced any emotion like that. I couldn't wait to get home. I delighted in getting there. And
so do you mean by that, she let you lead, yes, but she promoted you to the kids? It was like,
absolutely.
Hey, Daddy's going to be home. I can't wait. You know what I mean? It's going to be, okay. Cindy, what did that look like? How did you do that? How did you promote him in that way? Anything practical or anything you did?
I mean, I was with the kids all day, every day, because I homeschooled them. And
Right.
Maybe she wanted them.
Dad's awesome. Go hang out with him.
No, and I always looked forward to him coming home. And, I wanted them to look forward to him coming home.
Yeah.
And it was just
natural.
something that naturally happened.
Yeah, you loved him, and it kind of overflowed.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that leads into kind of, our Father in heaven, right? Mm-hmm. And how he delights in us. Yeah. And I don't know. It was just such a neat experience being a father and seeing those things play out in our home.
But she, yes, God delights in us, but she helped shape the kids' thoughts about that. Because I grew up feeling like when we talk about God the Father, that he had a perpetual frown, that he looked at me, boy, he's just not doing a good job. And I always felt that disapproval would be, well, the Bible teaches that God loves us, right? I mean, there's sin and he's going to chasten and he's going to handle these kind of things. But he's not looking for reasons to be upset with. And I think it's wonderful you did that, Cindy, because we view our Heavenly Father the way that we view our earthly father. There's just a natural connection there. And so for them to, Daddy's coming home, Daddy loves us, Daddy, you know what I mean? I want to go see Daddy. There is something spiritual that might not even be the first thing you think about, but it does shape the way that you see God the Father.
Yeah, God's not a cosmic killjoy, right? And she created that delight in me entering the home each night, and I felt it, and I enjoyed it. I was able to play with the kids and enjoy and find out how their day was, and then kind of enter into their lives in terms of being that advocate for them too, right? And gave me something to pray for on a daily basis.
Rich, when you came home, you were tired. Right? Long day. And now the kids are there and they want to play. Cindy's tired. She's been with the kids all day. And let's be honest, her work would have been more tiring than whatever your work was.
Most likely, yes.
Right? I mean, that's not to negate what you did, right? Because men work very hard. But I also know that when I was home with the kids, if I had a day with them, it's demanding, right? I mean, it's just over and over and over again. What did you do to take a load off of her? How did you, okay, so you come home, you want to relax, you want to, boy, it's been a long day. And I'm sure there were days that you did that, right? I mean, sometimes you need that. She says, hey, here you go. But there's other days that I need to engage here. What did you do to try to make sure that she felt she got the break and you came in and helped?
I would tell you that we had a very traditional home. I think if you were to look at our home, it would be, our roles were fairly easily defined from what we saw in the 40s and 50s.
Sure,
things like that. I mean, I took care of the house, the home, the yard, those types of things, the trash and so forth. And I never did hardly anything domestic.
Okay.
I failed in every opportunity that was offered to me. I still do. I don't enjoy cooking and cleaning and those things, but I do enjoy the other things. And also, we were probably very intentional, I would say, as well as having our children take part in those things too. We had a neighbor behind us. We have a rather large lot. And they didn't have a fence that separated us and them. And so part of our ministry of service, even to our neighbors, are, we would mow their yard. The back, he was in his late 70s, mid 70s, late 70s. And we would mow as much of it as his wife would allow. She still wanted him to get some form of exercise. But I mean, like even scooping the walk, I mean, we don't stop at our yard, right? We go all the way to the next driveway. And oftentimes you will find me snow blowing my neighbors' driveways out, but teaching those things to particularly our son and other things too, that everything is about ministry. Our kids like, I'm sorry.
No, and you always, taught them that if they were playing basketball or going to work or whatever, their primary position in that activity was to share Christ and to be a light to others.
And you get the delight in having fun as well, right? And so it is. And so, I've missed meals with our family because I was across the street praying for a neighbor going through a trial.
Sure.
Right. But sharing, when I'd come back, I would share not the details.
Sure.
But sharing why I was over there and what was going on and so forth. But everything's about ministry.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. So the house was built on it. I mean, it really was. It was built. By the way, did you have, you talked about a very traditional marriage. Was both parents that way? Both your homes growing up that way? A little more traditional on both sides? Sure. So it was very natural, very easy to do that. The second thing we talked about a week and a half ago was this. God's got to be the foundation. He's the builder, except the Lord build the house. But the parents have got to engage in the home. Yeah. We're seeing in the generation we're living in right now, we're seeing some very distracted, disengaged parents. Yeah. We've all gone to the restaurants and we've got our phones and the kids are on their devices and mom and dad are both on their devices. And you just see a disconnect. Yeah. There's not a relationship that's there. And then not just that they must lead it, engage in it, but we talked about some limits there too. And you kind of talked about the Deuteronomy 6 already. So, I mean, you've got to do life with them and you're showing them practical lessons. What were some of the limits? Because the easiest thing to do is let your kids do whatever they want to do, right? It's just let's just, if they're going to have a fit about something, well, give it to them. I don't want to have to deal with this. Did you have to fight any battles with that? Was there any lines you had to draw? What were some of the limits you might have said, we just don't think they may do it. The neighbor does this. Yeah. We don't do that here.
Sure. Well, I would say maybe limits in terms of our recreation. The kids came home one day and they kind of had talked a little bit and asked if we could do more skiing. And I said, yeah. I said, we could probably do that, but we'll probably sell the camper. And they were like, whoa, wait, we're not asking you to sell the camper. And I said, well, we can't afford to do everything, right? Yeah. Let's pick and choose, but we'd like to engage our children in things and activities that they would enjoy to do. And they came back and said, no, we would rather do the camping aspect rather than do the skiing. Yeah. There's limits like that we put on them. Our children all worked their way through school as well, right? We didn't just offer them everything. When it came time for cars, we helped in those areas, but there's still that responsibility of requiring them to do those things. We were very similar to you with phones. Our kids had the slider phone where you had to go through the multiple lines of texting, and until they were at an age in which it was a little bit more appropriate for them to have texting and
the social media and all that. They didn't get that until their friends all had. Facebook and Instagram, but our kids didn't do that until they were older.
I don't think ours. I may be wrong. By the way, I told the church 14. It was actually 15. I was talking to my son Chase this week, and I thought, wait, it might have been 15. So I called him and I asked him. He said, no, it's 15, Dad. That was 15 before I got that slider phone. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I don't think ours had social media until they were 18. I think it was basically when they went to school. I believe they didn't have access to it anyway. With the phone and that kind of thing. How did you navigate that? Was that because it is a difficult thing, right? Because the 8-year-old next door has more devices, better access, more phone. How did you navigate that?
I don't think our kids really. I mean, you could go on any of their Facebook accounts today, and you'd be hard pressed to find very often that they're even posting things.
That they're there,
or ever have.
Was that not a huge pressure?
It wasn't a huge pressure. Yeah. Okay, but even our middle daughter, when she played basketball with a local school. And she, everybody had their iPhones and all that. And we said, you can't have an iPhone unless you're going to pay for the data. Mm-hmm. So she just still had her little, flip phone, slider phone, whatever. Right. And, it was what it was.
What was a battle? What was tougher? Social media maybe wasn't it. Yeah. Was there anything else that was, you go, boy, this was a little more challenging. We had to walk through this one in a different way.
I would tell you that we probably were the recipients of a lot of pre-salvation grace, as well as having children who were saved at younger ages. It was a little bit of a Norman Rockwell painting for us. And not that we did anything right in this. There's not a formula to parenting, right? There's, you train up a child in the way in which he should go. You look at Proverbs and, those are wisdom proverbs that you hope, trust, and lean into Christ on those things. I think that, we really did have some really fun years and wonderful experiences with our kids that we didn't have some of the same battles. And it wasn't beyond the realm of knowing that there was temptations out there, but speaking about those temptations in a very open and honest way, and always giving our children an opportunity to come and talk with us. Yeah. You'd mentioned something about, even like the nighttime. That was probably perhaps the sweetest time for me as a father, because I had a couple kids who would just really, really open up during those nighttime cuddles, right? And you could go into the rooms and you could talk with them and share with them and so forth. And I would tell you, those were some of the best gospel moments that we've ever had.
Yes. My wife was super good at that. Very intentional that hey, that's when the kids, they don't want to go to sleep. They just want to, they'd love to talk. And there's something about that quieting down and you're kind of, it almost gives them a chance in a way to take some things off of their heart and to share them and to be able to rest well. That Psalm 127 passage talks about, so he giveth his beloved sleep. It's almost like you can release those burdens. Those kids can release some of those burdens to mom or dad as you're sitting there. And now, okay, that's off my chest. Now I can sleep. And I think those are really special moments with your kids. The last thing we talked about was love has to be permeating the home, and a lot of times we can, as believers, get so caught up in the rules or in rigidness, or we forget some, or we can just get busy and distracted. We just have a lot going on in life. We can almost forget that love is the vehicle that really does bind our hearts together. It really, when your kids love to be around you, they're going to share more with you. They're going to adopt what you believe more readily. They're going to open themselves up to conversation and to your wisdom. Yeah. So how did you consistently show those kids we love you?
Wow. That's you provide for your children. You protect your children. I have one child who was going through a little bit of a difficult issue, and I had to get involved, and to the point where I told this child that I said, you know that I love you to the extent of which I would die for you. And she said, Dad, I've never doubted that for a minute. And to hear that is really, really sweet. That there wasn't a question in her mind. But in the midst of some of those parenting things, there's also, that ditch that we talked about. There's those opportunities to fall into the ditch. And one of my children, I did a little bit of emotional damage to even the challenge of when sinful moments would come up. I would say, is that a way a Christian would walk or talk? And I created such doubt and confusion about their salvation that child came up to me at one point and says, Dad, I don't know what a relationship with Jesus looks like. What do you mean by that? And I had to go back in my mind and think, what have I done and what have I said? And instead of being encouraging, even in those moments of failure, of saying, what would someone who's walking with the Lord do, as opposed to really like, are you sure you're even a believer?
That's a great observation, because I think it's easy to throw those things out and not even second guess what might be going through a child's mind as you say something like that. And I think that's a point well taken also, in that there are times that one of the best things you can do is apologize to your kids. Hey, listen, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to give you that impression. I didn't mean to get a little, heated in that moment. You know what? Daddy makes mistakes too. But Daddy's got to ask God to forgive him too, and I'm asking you to forgive me. I think there's something powerful in that too.
Absolutely. I have a really kind of an interesting story that one of my favorite as a father. One of my children came up to me once time after they were in some trouble, and said, Dad, you're just always getting mad. And I told him, I said, you can't mistake discipline for anger, right? And they were kind of in a little bit of a huff. And I said, you have to realize that I'm a perfect father. And the child looked up at me and was like, okay, this doesn't resonate with my doctrinal grid. Right. Yeah, it just doesn't sound right. And I said, you have to realize that you're a perfect child. And they're looking at me like, where is this going? And I said, look, God in his perfect providence brought you in and allowed me to be your father in a perfect way. I said, in the same way, you as a child were given to me. And I said, in the middle of this, we're imperfect, right? And in the same way that God is revealing sin in your life, he's revealing sin in my life too, in the midst of this. And it's kind of that sanctifying work of God, right? And oftentimes when I used to think about having a family before I ever had a family, it's like, I'm going to be this perfect thing, right, for my children and so forth. And it's done nothing but reveal, the sins of the heart in my life, and I know in my wife's life, and how God uses that to draw us out and become closer to him. So
if you don't, that's really good, because if you're never honest with your kids, well, they're not going to know how to handle. You need to open up a little bit about real life struggle. When I was 9, I remember thinking, my parents were like 31 at the time, and I remember thinking, if something went wrong right now, Dad would know exactly what to do. I just viewed them in that way, that they know exactly what to do. And when I turned 31, I thought, I don't know anything. You know what I mean? But when you open yourself up a little bit to your kids, there is a security in knowing that, you know what, Dad's working through some things also. But it also, as you get older, you realize, okay, I've seen how Dad went through it. I've seen the steps he took. I know he wasn't perfect, but I know that he had to go through some things, and Mom had to go through some things, and they were learning and they were growing. And now you've showed them how to go through those things. I think that's an equipping moment that, okay, this is how Mom and Dad went through those challenges or those struggles. Now I have a pattern that I can do it, as opposed to, hey, Dad was perfect, Mom was perfect. They never had these challenges just because they didn't know about it.
Yeah. Well, and they need to see that you're a sinner also.
Yeah.
I mean, when you screw up, when you get angry when you shouldn't.
Yeah.
I mean, you need to go and apologize to them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's no different than having to apologize to an adult.
Yeah, that's
right.
And
then they can see,
yes,
that you're not perfect and that you're relying on God, and
yes,
that they
just
need to
because
do the
you're
same.
a child doesn't mean that you did not, offend or violate whatever you were supposed in that relationship. So great conversation. I really enjoy what you guys have said. Thank you for being so candid and sharing some really good thoughts. If you had to leave maybe a young parent with a thought, maybe a piece of advice, it's easier once you look back, a little bit back over the years. Sometimes the things that we thought we had right, well, wasn't always. And I learned this. Any advice for a young parent that you would say, hey, if I had to do it again, this, and maybe you did it, but it was really important and it was underscored here, and so I'm glad I did. Or maybe you say, I'd have done it more.
I would say that, we spent a lot of time praying for our kids. We prayed for them before we had them. We prayed for them while we had them. We're praying for our
We prayed for their spouses before they even knew who they were.
Yeah. I mean, we were very, very committed to praying for our children. And I would say that one of the things I probably would like to have done more is even pray for myself, not in a selfish way, but that I would be even better at doing the things that I'm commanded to do as well. It's that idea that I was so focused on these children that there were so many things that got drawn out over the years of myself and being more patient. You might get the feeling that I'm a patient person just in this discussion, but I'm not. There were times when I felt like I could have handled things so much differently, right? And so, there's no perfect parent, there's no perfect child. But I do believe in God and His mercy and His love and grace and just that providential care that He gives. And I just forever blessed in doing that. But pray, don't forget to pray for yourself and be humble.
Sure.
Be humble.
Well, and I would say, as a mom, sometimes, the baby changing diapers all the time, that's hard. You get to the toddler stage, that's hard. Junior high kids are crazy. You get teenagers, and that's another. But even during those difficult times, just enjoy them. Now that we're at the end and we don't have kids at home anymore, some of those days are super long, but the years have flown by.
Flown by, yeah. I love, and I said this in the message, I love what Tony Evans had said about the Jewish table, and that obviously the food brings you together. That's the occasion. But so much more is happening at that table. And the correction, the instruction, the pouring into, the listening to stories, all of that. And he said, we did that growing up. We when my kids were growing up, we did that. We did it consistently. We did it faithfully. We did it the way we should have done it. He says, but looking back, he would say, if I could change one thing, I'd do it twice as much. Sure. And he wasn't saying he messed up. No, I did it. He just said what you said just now. Those were valuable days. And those were days that you just never get back again. So thank you for sharing that. I think if there's any exasperated parents out there right now, and there are in our church community, because we all get there, there is hope and there is good. And if you put the time in now and the effort in now and the consistency in now and the prayer and the Bible and keep the Lord at the center of all of it, as they get older, it now becomes a relationship that you enjoy. We're at that stage now where, man, I can't wait to see my boys. I can't wait for them when they come back. I can't wait to talk to them on the phone. I can't wait to hear what's going on in their lives. And you do have to put the work in now to be able to get to that place, though. So listen, very, very interesting conversation. Thank you for sharing what you did. We've got so many people in our church that you just would never know, who somebody is or what their background is. I have the opportunity to know people a little bit better than most people do. And I just knew you guys would be a really interesting couple to talk to this about. So thank you for sharing what you did, and praise the Lord for giving you godly children. The work, the time, the effort, the prayer was certainly there. The grace of God was there, and that needs to undergird everything too, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
You got to have the grace of God as well. Hey, Castleview, thank you so much for watching. Listen, if you need some help, there may be some in our church right now that you say, you know what, I just didn't grow up. I didn't grow up with traditional parents. I didn't grow up in a Christian home. I don't really know what to do right now with our kids. Would you reach out to us? We've got people like the Kleppers that would love to sit down and take you under their wing and disciple and just help. This is what we did. Here's some practical things that we did to help. And so you're not alone. I don't want you to feel like you don't have a resource to be able to help. And I just really appreciate you watching and being a part of this conversation today. If it was helpful to you, maybe you've got some friends in your life that it might be helpful for them as well. Share it with them and make sure that they get to hear the information that we got to hear today as well. Hey, hope you have a great week. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next time.